green light on the mic. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Livermore, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great day. Let's see, it's 12:30, which in the Navy is 1 bell into the watch. If we started at 12 noon, I would be striking the bell 8 times, which gets monotonous. Today, we're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Ted Michaels.
Thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as part of my president's year, I also like to have us repeat the 4-way test. And our own Jackie Williams-Courtright will be doing the 4-way test and leading us all in a choral speech of the 4-way test.
All right.
Lead us off.
A chorus of it. Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Ted. Well, we have several visitors here who are here because they want to hear Dr. Nate talk to us all. And so we have a song for you all that the band persons have put together. All right.
All right. Ready for us? Yeah. What are we doing?
Hi folks, our guest speaker is going to talk about emergency medicine and all that doctoring stuff, so we thought we'd all sing Good Lovin' together. Yes.
And now Kathy Coyle with a thought for the day.
I'm too excited. That was so exciting. I don't know whether I can do this. Really. Because I have something fairly serious and thoughtful. Well, anyway. Okay. So I just want to talk a little bit about the Rotary theme for the year, which is create a lasting impact. And what it made me think about and what it means to me. And what came to me was that lasting impact doesn't need to be a game changer like achieving polio-free world, which is a really great thing and lasting. But lasting impact can also be a connection that makes a difference, and I'm going to talk about that. I first met Lorena Fernandez when she was a 5th grader at Junction Avenue School. The READY program was in its 2nd year, and we included 5th graders at that time, and that changed to only middle school about a year later. Lorena sat with me that first day. She was working on social studies, specifically the Spanish explorers and their ships. As we talked about this, I casually asked her what job she would like to have had on a ship. And without hesitation, she said, the chef. I went, the chef? Okay. The conversation we had about what those sailors would have on the menu was a lot of fun, including how she would hide the weevils. It was the beginning of a long-lasting connection through middle school, high school, and college to now. She grew from a quiet and shy 9-year-old to a confident young woman who is now teaching 3rd grade in Fresno. She was in high school when she shared her family's story with me, finally shared it with me, about how they came to the United States. How her father was murdered and dumped in the driveway of their ranch, and how her mother gathered up her 4 young children and managed to get to the United States legally with the help of relatives in the United States. She later shared that story with the club, and it really impacted me about the resilience of this young mother and her children and how they managed their lives. She did have another champion besides me. She had Bob Cowan, who took her mother and her up in his home built. Yes, and Doris, so you know Doris. And we were invited to her quinceañera, her high school graduation, and later her graduation from Fresno. I helped her with her college essay, in which she mentioned READY, and what it meant to have people who believed in her and supported her. We encouraged her to apply for a Pedrosi, and she was successful. And then she later told me that Kentucky Fried Chicken gave her scholarship money too. She started working for them in high school, and she just needed to work a few hours every quarter while she was at school, and they would continue to give her scholarship money. So for me, the lasting impact is Lorena's success, and through that has made a lasting impact on me. She created a lasting impact on me. So thanks very much.
Great story. Let's recognize our front line. Once again, Linda Stanford is doing double duty. Oh, well, you want me to be closer. Thank you, Don. Linda Stanford is once again doing double duty as Spur reporter and Spur publisher. Again, talk to Linda about how easy it is to be a Spur publisher. We could always use more help with that. That's not a mouse. Okay, something fell and rolled across the floor there. Michelle is our photographer today. Ted Michaels, thank you, Ted, is our audiovisual. And Sonia couldn't make it today, so she requested that a new incoming member, Monica Kuhlander, be the greeter. Did everyone get greeted as they came? Okay. Feast your eyes. Look behind you at the red vests. These are our sergeant-at-arms. They make sure the meeting is run properly, and they take all of your donations to the club. So we've got them uniformed now, so everyone can tell who a sergeant-at-arms is when they have to donate some money to the club. So thank you, Phil, David, and Debbie today, and we'll see Sonia again in a week or two. Tim is doing videography again, and I'll try not to break the camera. Okay. Visiting Rotarians. I know we have at least one here. Okay, so Monica, are you going to introduce the young lady from the Pleasanton Downtown Club?
Yes. This is Audrey Horning. She's from the Downtown Club. She is retired from the
New business CPA.
That was my classification.
That was her classification,
okay.
now
But I'm
retired.
retired, so I don't have a new classification.
I understand.
But she lives right around the corner and loves to come to our meetings once in a while
Okay.
because her meetings are in Pleasanton and she doesn't want to drive all the way over there every other night.
What's good, Monica? Her first name was?
Audrey.
Audrey.
Audrey, I'm
Let's
sorry.
say hi to Audrey.
We're fellow Rotarians.
Okay. Any other visiting Rotarians? Okay, I see Bill standing. Oh, he's a mic wielder. Any guests of Rotarians here today? Oh, I hear nothing, and we'll introduce our speaker when his time comes. All right, we got that. Announcements. Hey, we're a club that can keep pretty busy, and in the past couple of days, I've learned about all sorts of things coming up in the future. One of them is the Community Service Day on September 19th, which is the same day as the Sleep in Heavenly Peace Build-A-Bed Day, which is the same day as the district's meeting in Santa Clara, or is it San Jose?
At the Fremont Convention Center.
Fremont Convention Center. So that's where we're trying to link up Rotarians in the district, Rotary clubs in the district, with other nonprofits so we can team together and get good things done. Now, so that's on September 19th. A lot of stuff happening then. Volunteer for something, okay? I heard yesterday at the Rotarian Foundation board meeting that there will be a memorial service for Bill Mayall on September 26th. There's
Brian Mayo.
It's okay, Joel.
Yeah, you're stage fright. Here we go. So Brian Mail. But as yet, there's not been announced a place or a time. On September 29th, the foundation is holding a fundraiser at 3 Steves to raise money for Tri-Valley Haven, who is expanding their facility quite a bit, and they need some help with that. So more on that as I start learning more details. Now, Roland.
Oh, I have an incredible announcement. I want to be fine double because I realized I had a second one.
40
So
bucks.
the first one is sitting right over here. This is Michelle. If you don't know Michelle, she's wonderful. She has a boss named Matt. They're wonderful. I just want to say this summer, LARPD partnered with us. This is the second year in a row. We had over 350 kids and moms come to the pool. And what's special about that is they close the pool at 5. They reopen it at 6. And then we're able to bring in these hundreds of people. And it's because of Michelle, it's because of Matt, and Michelle's going, what are you talking about? But, I actually wrote a letter this week, she knows what I'm talking about. But we're so grateful for the wonderful partnership with LARPD and all they do. So that's 20 bucks. It should be more, but it's 20. And then the second thing is we have our superpower is our partners, and we have something called Hope Fest. And so you've got the city with us, you have the city police chief is with us, we'll have the Mallard Police. We'll also have 400 pumpkins. We're doing a big art thing. Dave Howard will be there speaking. The mayor will be there. We'll have about 20 partners that all provide great services here in our community. And that includes things like City Serve and others like that. But here's the bottom line. You can come and you will have a great time. If you can understand Spanish, half of it's going to be in Spanish, so bring your Spanish friends. But if you have grandkids, and I think most of you are at the level where you got grandkids, it'll be a spectacular time. It's downtown in Livermore. It's at the Carnegie Park, 12 to 2. Costco's one of our sponsors, so we'll feed anybody that comes. So think about it. It's on your table. Check it out. Join us.
Thank you, Roland.
That's another 20. I did really cheap, by the way. I'll go 50. Here we go.
Okay. Thank you, Roland. Are there any other unscheduled announcements? Just saying. We have opportunities, though. This is something this Saturday, and it's going to be cool, and you get to wear your grubby clothes.
It is true. Wow. So you will remember that in February we did our funding drive for the Alan Frank Community Room, which will be a flexible room at the old train depot. You'll remember that our project is to turn that empty space into a space where nonprofits can meet. It's a room that holds about between 20 and 30 folks, all the way up to 40 if it's stadium style. And this week, we're going to start our volunteer work. You'll remember we had to have a lot of the work done by licensed contractors because the city owns the building. So our general contractor is done, our HVAC contractor is done, all the stuff that is required to have a license is completed and been signed off. Now we are doing, for this next phase, laying primer down on the walls there. So this Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, show up in your clothes that can get some paint on them. Closed-toed shoes because it's still a construction site and there's stuff hanging around there, so you have to be careful. Bring gloves because we have some material in the room that will move around as we get ready to lay down taping and doing all the things to make sure that the paint primer goes where we want it to and not where we don't want it to. We're going to do a little bit of sanding. And so we're looking for a total of about 12 people. If we get too much more than that, we can't fit and do all of the work in there. We've got about 4 or 5 from the morning club, so we're looking about 8. I need 2 more 6-foot ladders. That would be helpful. And if you have a extension roller at your home, you could bring one of those too. But we're going to basically do a little bit of sanding, a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of lay down on taping, and then some primer. And we're going to start at 8 in the morning. Park in the parking garage downtown. So if you remember where the train depot is, train depot is next to the train tracks. Okay? And it wasn't always. You'll remember there was 40 years when it wasn't next to the train tracks, of course. And that was very cutting edge back in the day to have a train depot not near the train tracks. But it is near the train tracks now. It's right next to the downtown parking garage. Park in the parking garage. It's at the west end of the building, so if you go to the east end of the building, you'll take a bus and end up somewhere else, so don't do that, please. So show up at 8. We will wrap by noon, whether we're done or not. We'll come back the next week if we need to do a little more work. Questions? I'm looking for about half a dozen of you. A couple of you have already said, I think Joel, you've said
So
you're
how about
coming.
a show of hands?
I had a couple others. Did anybody else say they were coming? There we go. We got another one there. Oh, another one there. All right, anybody else going to do anything?
Come on, Saturday morning chores, folks.
All right. Well, I think we're going to have a great time there. Thank you all. Thank you, President Joel, on that.
And thank you, past President Mark. Okay. Oh, I didn't see Glenn come in today. Is someone going to talk about Ready? I think it starts on Monday. Is that right, Dennis?
It does. It does.
Okay.
Sunday.
Well, okay. Volunteer to be a Ready person. It's a mentorship. You help them with their homework. You ask them questions like, what do you think you want to be if you're going to be on a ship? Yeah. By the way, my father always told me when I was a little kid, we had Scandinavian background. He said, yeah, your great grandfather was a Viking cook. Well, someone had to. Anyway, all right. So Ready is not only the after-school tutoring and developing the relationships with the kids, but they also have field trips to cool places like the Oakland Zoo and the Exploratorium and so forth. It's a lot of fun. Contact Glenn Kubiak or show up Monday. I'm sure that Glenn would be okay with the little bit of extra work to get new people in on Ready. All right. Mystery dinner is this Saturday. And I don't know if there are still spots open for that or not, but those of you going 5:45 p.m. in the parking area outside of Simone's French Pastry Shop in the old Nob Hill parking lot. All right, brags and boasts. Are there any brags or boasts out there? We already got a $50 donation from Roland. Oh, Splend. Give that man a mic.
How about you want me to give up a mouth first?
Well, you can always brag first.
Well, I had another grandchild last week, a little girl. Her name is Victoria. She lives in San Diego. We're going to go on Friday and go spend a week and take her brother Legoland, I think.
Great.
So I'll give you a couple $100 for that. Does that sound?
That sounds wonderful. We Rotarians do like to see the world, and one of us has just seen a big chunk of it. Mark, can you tell us about your trip?
Yeah.
I came back to Livermore on Saturday, and it was, so Livermore's really an amazing, oh, it's not that part? It's the part before that?
As long as the donation is.
All right. The last 3 weeks with my lovely bride, we were on a ship. We went to Italy and to Croatia and to Greece and saw all of the things that you'd imagine we would see in all of those places. And yes, they're still there and they're still old and they're still pretty amazing on that. And for that, I'll give $100 to the club. There were fires, but it didn't burn us personally. They were far away.
They were far away, okay. I wondered.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
I forgot one thing, sorry, I forgot one thing. If anybody hears this, I'll get roasted. So, yeah, we were in Italy in July because our youngest son got engaged there.
And in what city was he engaged?
I did forget.
Leonard, what city was it in?
Sorry?
Where? What city?
Long story short, we went there for a couple weeks, mostly because I knew they were getting engaged in Lake Como, but they were staying in Florence, and so we decided we were going to go to Italy. I go there a lot, but I wanted to see my cousins, so I went to Sardinia and saw my cousins, and went to Bari and saw my cousins, and then we went to Florence, and we had a surprise engagement party for her. She didn't know we were coming to meet her family.
Do you speak Sardo?
Huh?
Do you speak Sardo? Sardinia?
Sardo, is very weird language. I mean, like Venetian is a very weird language. I can sort of know a little dialect from my mom of Puglia, but most I just speak Italian. And if I'm there for like 3 or 4 weeks, I can speak Italian, but it's hard when you don't. If you only speak to the waiters at La Conda, it really doesn't count.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, that looks like all the brags for the day. Let's see. So next week, our district governor is going to be visiting us. And her name is Gita Kadambi. She was a manager and she has a PhD, and I think she's retired now. She's going to talk to us about her goals and hopes for the coming Rotary year. So she'll be here in this room. Again, sandwiches at noon, meeting starts at 12:30. And now, it is my great pleasure to introduce my friend Nate, Dr. Nate Stuempfig. And I found out he was an emergency room doctor, I think, back during COVID when he was talking about all the things they had to do to get people into the emergency room back then. And he's also the president of our church council, and he's a good guitar player. So you can join the club and help us out.
Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nathaniel Stuempfig.
Thank you. This is cool. I've never been to a Rotary Club before meeting, so this is amazing. Thank you very much, and thanks for the music ahead of time. It spoke to me as a guitar player. I really liked it. So thank you all very much. This picture is old, obviously. I'm much older, and it's funny, I actually just got new professional headshots through, I work for Kaiser, so through Kaiser last week, so I didn't have enough time to put those up and update them. This is what I really look like, sorry. Before I start, any current or former physicians out in the audience? Okay, good. This is all right. I'm good with that. Because I would have called you up if you are. No, anyway, so the title of the talk, and with a little help from President Joel here, is how I got here, what it's like, and then what I wish people would, stop doing, essentially. So I'll try to go through that quickly. I want to make sure there's time for questions. Okay, the first thing, so I'm an emergency medicine physician. Like I said, I work for Kaiser. Actually, I'm out in the Central Valley. We cover Manteca and Modesto Kaisers. But I do know several Kaiser physicians around here. So the first part, how I got here. Well, this is the part where I talk about myself, so I'll try to go quickly because I think that's the most boring part, to be honest with you. This was my dream, okay? That was my favorite baseball player growing up, Will Clark. I grew up in Chico, California, and that was my idol. That was my dream all the way through high school, and then it became very clear that I wasn't going to be good enough to get there. So I had to kind of go to a backup plan, and I thought, well, let's start with college first. And luckily I found a college where I could play baseball for a little bit, but mostly get a good education, and that was at UC San Diego. So I got to go down to San Diego, spent 4 years there, didn't really know what I wanted to do, knew that I liked sports, and that was about it. So I tinkered with some biology because I thought maybe I could do physical therapy or something like that along the way. But the biology thing just kind of tinkered off for a little bit. I ended up doing psychology, which is actually our family business. My father's a psychologist, my sister's a school psychologist, my mom's a teacher, so that was the family business. Figured I'd go into that. But I did do enough classes to get a minor in biology. Now, while I was in psychology, I actually took a really cool course, Drugs and Addiction, and it talked about the behavioral aspects of drugs of abuse and drugs of addiction, but also went into some of the science behind it. And I got really involved in that and really liked it in college, and so I was lucky enough to get a job across the street from UC San Diego, which is at the Scripps Research Institute. And so that was my first job out of college, and I was a lab tech, and I got to be involved in science and really, really liked that scientific aspect of things, figuring out how things worked, how the human body worked, or in this case, how the rat body worked. But that was really, I really liked that, but I missed the interacting with the public and wanting to be part of people's lives. So that's kind of when the thought of maybe going into medicine would be a good idea. I had to do a few things. I had to take classes through the extension to meet some of the prerequisite classes, so like the organic chemistry. I would get my lab experiments set up, run over to UCSD across the street, take my class, run back, do the lab experiment and all that. And then, of course, the big barrier a lot of times is the MCAT, which is the entrance exam for medical school. And you kind of have to get a certain score on that in order to be considered competitive to get in. So I dedicated for about 4 or 5 months. I just said, every waking hour, not every waking hour, but a reasonable amount of time every single day was going to be spent studying for this MCAT. And so I did, and luckily enough, I got a score that was reasonable and got accepted. So there were a few med schools that I chose to go, or that offered me spots, and I chose to go to Midwestern University, which is in Downers Grove, Illinois, which is about 30 minutes outside of Chicago. I'd lived in California my whole life. I figured if I was going to do something different, now would be the time to do it. So I went to medical school, and medical school is interesting. It's changed a little bit since then, but it's 2 years of classroom work, which is all just biology, physiology, anatomy, all of that stuff. Very little actual in-person connection. So it was a lot of studying, a lot of late night studying. The content wasn't all that difficult in terms of concepts. I found undergrad to be much more difficult from a conceptual standpoint, but it's just the amount of information. It's like drinking from a fire hose. It's like quickly get all the information in you can and then dump it and get the next amount of information and all that. So that was the first 2 years. Tough, but the second 2 years were much more fun. That's when you get to do your rotations. That's when you get to do 6 weeks in family medicine, 4 weeks in OBGYN, pediatrics, surgery, all of that. So you can kind of try to decide what specialty you're going to go into going forward. And so I chose emergency medicine. I liked the aspect of getting to do a little bit of everything and being involved in everyday care and just kind of always seeing what's new and what's coming up. You never know. So I did residency training, and the residency training was 4 years. At the time, it was called a traditional rotating internship year. So you went through all the different blocks. Again, you did internal medicine, surgery, OBGYN, all of that. And so that was 1 year, and then years 2 through 4, I did emergency medicine with a real focus on emergency medicine. I got to do all of those in Chicago. My intern year was at Swedish Covenant Hospital, and then my years 2 through 4 were at Resurrection Hospital System in Chicago. But the nice thing about that is that I got to rotate at a lot of different hospitals in Chicago. So if you know a hospital in Chicago, I've probably worked there. And the cool thing was I got to do a lot of my trauma rotations at Cook County Hospital, which was very, very interesting, and also the basis of the show, ER. So now that I'm a doctor, okay, we make a joke of this in emergency medicine that, this is how it started, and then on the right, that's how it's going right now. So y'all know Noah Wiley from ER initially, and then now from the pit. So that's kind of how the process is. And what I'd like to do kind of more is focus on what it's like now. That was my path. Everybody has their own path to go forward. But what is training like, and then what is actually the job like? The training. So I have kind of broken down a little bit here. But essentially, as I mentioned, I did the 1 year of traditional rotating internship year. And that was nice because you got a little flavor of everything. But it was also very difficult. This was back, they have better rules now. The ACGME, the governing body of residency programs, actually has, curtailed some of the crazy work hours. But my intern year was during the old days where the training hours, they didn't really count them. So most weeks were 80-hour weeks to 100-hour weeks sometimes. We would do calls, and these calls were roughly 30 hours. You'd show up at 7 a.m., you'd do your day's work, you'd receive all the sign out for the people going home. You'd stay up all night taking care of the patients that were there and then admitting new patients. And then in the morning, you'd do this thing called grand rounds where you'd have to present 1 or 2 patients that you saw. And they would basically, it was an audience like this of all doctors, and they would just throw questions at you till you got it wrong, essentially. So I did 72 of those in 1 year. So 30 hours, yeah. So that was a lot of hours. And in the meantime, you've got to be studying for your board exams and things like that. So really residency, there are some downtimes, but for the most part, it's, you have to have kind of a single mindset of medicine and really trying to train yourself up. Emergency medicine was then years 2 through 4, fewer calls because emergency medicine works in shifts, and about 70% of your rotations are in emergency medicine. But because you're in emergency medicine, you have to know a little bit about every single medical specialty. So you do a lot of different rotations, and I wrote some of these down here, but intensive care is a big one. We did 4 months in the intensive care unit because you have to know how to deal with critically ill patients. And then a lot of other specialty things. We did trauma, of course, is a big one. That was fun at Cook County Hospital. It was very tiring, but it was fun. And then things like toxicology, infectious disease, cardiology, orthopedics, all of that stuff is very important in emergency medicine because you're going to see all of it, and you have to know at least enough to get them to the specialist if that's what's needed, or if something that's relatively simple, it can be taken care of in the emergency department. So moving on to what it's like now. Emergency medicine is kind of a unique skill set in the sense that you can practice anywhere, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but you get to practice anywhere, but with that comes a variety of different practice environments. So my personal practice, again in Modesto and Manteca, our hospital, it's a community hospital, so it's very, very busy, and we just kind of, I think it would be very similar, maybe not necessarily in the patient population, but in terms of any of the places around here, I think it's pretty similar to what my environment's like. Basically, it's mostly nonstop. People coming in all the time. There are hours where the volume dips a little bit, but then also staffing dips during that time too. So it's always busy. You never really get a chance to just kind of sit around and have a good time. Most patients, I would say, are moderately ill. You do get very severe patients, some of the critical patients, and there are some that just kind of like, why'd you come here today? But most of the people have a legitimate complaint. I have bad abdominal pain, I have chest pain, and so it's not critical where it needs to be dealt with right this second, but it could potentially be serious, and so we need to run those tests, and we need to figure out who is serious and who is okay to go home, and I think that's the biggest thing about emergency medicine. And then if you do identify something serious, how to take care of that. You get to do procedures, which is one of the things that I really liked. I didn't want to be a surgeon where I was doing surgery all day, every day, but I did like the idea of tactile things with your hands and getting a chance to kind of, do something that can be life-saving, so I liked that idea. The thing about emergency medicine, I think, is the biggest thing is constant interruptions. So I'll talk about this a little bit later, but there have been studies to show that the average emergency medicine physician is interrupted every 3 minutes. And this is an interruption that's not just, it takes you away from whatever task you're doing and you have to focus on another task. So it's very much a skill of dealing with something and then moving on to the next thing and moving on and then coming back to that other thing and kind of remembering that. So keeping lists in your head and all of that. As a side note, one of the best studies I ever saw in residency was somebody, so the stereotype about emergency medicine physicians is that they all have a lean towards ADHD. And somebody actually did a study, and they pulled all the different residency programs at their hospital, and they gave them the test for ADHD. And it turned out that emergency medicine was scored very, very high. They were like leaps and bounds above everybody else. So I think it's kind of an environment where it's fast-paced and all of that. So anyway, that's an aside. But another thing, along with the constant interruptions, there are things like teaching. We have a residency program. That's one of my passions. I love teaching. And so teaching on shift involves a lot of talking, a lot of communication with the learner, wherever phase they are. And then also communicating with your staff, always talking to your nurses. Everybody has to be in lockstep, so there's a constant communication. And now with all the technology, it's communication verbally, as well as these pings always coming on your computer and then on your phone too. They want to make us reachable at any time. So your phone is pinging, your computer's pinging, talking to nurses. Somehow it works. It's controlled chaos is essentially what it is. Again, as I mentioned, the computer documentation is a big thing. Everything's gone to electronic medical records, which is really good because you can finally read doctors' handwriting. The bad news is now you have information for everything. And so really trying to filter out, okay, was that visit 3 years ago for this particular problem? Is that relevant to what we're dealing with today? Maybe, maybe not. You know, what plan has your doctor had? Are you on the medications that are actually listed on your chart? Because a lot of those don't get updated. It's like, well, are you actually taking that or not? And it's important to know in that particular situation. And then finally, my favorite part, and the part I get to do the least of, is connecting with patients and interacting with patients. You get maybe 5-10 minutes, depending on what you're there for, but trying to find that time to block everything out, spend at least 5 to 10 minutes talking about what's going on, instructions on what to do going forward, making a plan. You know, it's a partnership with patients. You know, I can recommend something, but that might not fit into what the person's capable of doing or their lifestyle. And so what can we do to make it work so that everybody's better for this? So kind of the back picture of the job. Emergency medicine is really nice because you get to work shifts. And so you have 10 to 12 hour shifts. It's a variable setting. Like I said, it depends where you work. You could work in rural Montana and see 8 patients a day and do a 24-hour shift up there because you're only seeing 8 patients. Or you can, you know, work in a place like we see 200 patients a day in our hospital alone. And so having to go through that and doing, you know, we have 6 doctors on at any given time. So those types of things, it can be variable. If you don't want the high intensity, you can always work urgent care shifts, rapid care shifts. I have a bunch of colleagues that work call center every once in a while. So when you call in, many of you are probably Kaiser patients. If you call in, you get a nurse first, and then the nurse will either field the call if they feel comfortable with it, and if not, they'll call the doctor who's on call. And a lot of my colleagues do that, and they're the ones that consult on those calls. You can be flexible. I have a number of colleagues that want to work for a week straight and then take a week off. So a lot of my colleagues have done some amazing trips because they can work for 2 weeks and then take 2 weeks off. So that's kind of nice. And then, you know, the group splits holidays, weekends, nights, so we all have to take our turns to doing that kind of thing. The nice thing about emergency medicine is that it kind of opens you up to a lot of, you get to see what the hospital's really like, so you can go into all these other avenues. You can go into administration, you can do education, which is kind of what I love and my specialty. You can do other committee work, specialty work, so a lot of these physicians will actually take a fellowship and do like a toxicology fellowship. So anybody you call it the poison control, if you get a hold of a doctor at poison control, they're almost always emergency medicine trained, and then they do a specialty in toxicology. Global health, that's a big thing. A lot of emergency medicines end up doing global initiatives and doing the Doctors Without Borders and things like that. And then also event medicine, so the doctors at the marathon, the doctors at concerts, all of that, almost always are emergency medicine doctors. And then finally, a lot of my colleagues will do research as well. So pros, this is kind of, forgive me, I adopted this on kind of a recruitment talk that I do. So do you want to do emergency medicine, do you not? So, to me, there are more pros than cons, absolutely. So I'll go through that real quick. But shift work, so no call. When you're done, you're done. You get to leave work at home. As I mentioned before, you get flexible schedules, which are really nice. It's exciting, it's very unpredictable. You never know what's coming through the door. You always have to be on your toes. You have a lot of options kind of outside of medicine, outside of clinical medicine, but within medicine, because you're exposed to every single specialty, you're exposed to every single facet of the hospital. You get to do procedures, which I really like. Varied practice settings, as I talked to, varied types of patients. Depends if you practice in rural Montana, your patients' populations could be much different than if you practice in downtown LA. And so you can kind of pick and choose where you want to work and the population you want to work with. It's very team-oriented. Again, the communication, if you're somewhat of an extrovert like I am, you like to talk and you like to be involved in teamwork and team aspects, and that goes back to the whole baseball thing. That's kind of what I really liked. It's a mobile, you don't have to build a practice. You can pick up, I can leave tomorrow and sit down in an emergency department and the patients come to you. You get job security. I know AI is coming for all of our jobs, but I think this one will be one of the last.
Those robots.
It's true. I mean, you can teach them to do some things, but as of right now, we're still better than Google. As of right now. No management running a business. I'm not a business person. I don't know how to do that at all. So, I think a lot of doctors back in the old day when they would run their own practice, they would get into trouble because they didn't know how to manage the business aspect of that. So for me, that's a stress relief. You get to care for everyone. This is actually one of the biggest reasons I went into emergency medicine. It doesn't matter who can pay, who can't. If you need help, we'll take care of you. It's mandated by law, and almost all of us love that aspect of it because it's just, you don't have to think about insurance. You need help, I'm here to help you. It's a safety net for society, so in that line of things, we do a lot of other things besides medicine. We do a lot of social medicine, so people that are unhoused, people that need certain helps, people that need help at home, people that can't care for a loved one that need to get them to a facility. We do a lot of that as well. And luckily we have some really talented people that are far better at it than I am, so I always lean very heavily on our social workers and other people like that. And then I think the best part is you get great stories. Some of the cons to the work, again, shift work. Circadian rhythm is tough. You'll work it overnight and 2 days later you're back at 6 a.m. and it's flipping back and forth can really wreak havoc on your schedule, especially if you have kids like I do. The kids get up at 6 every day, so it's like, well, okay, we're up. Nights, weekends, holidays, I can't tell you how many family events and sporting events and soccer games and things like that unfortunately you do have to miss from time to time. You try to find a reasonable balance, which I think I have, but I can't make it to every soccer game. Stress on shift, I will say that it takes me 2 hours to come down from a shift. It's always intense, you never know. Even when it's quiet, nobody ever says quiet, nobody says the Q word in the emergency department because you know bad stuff's gonna happen right when you do. And there are a lot of people that are big believers that the full moon will bring out some weird things as well. I put calling consultants up here, and I'm glad nobody else is a physician in the room, but that actually is very stressful because oftentimes you're calling a cardiologist at 2 in the morning and waking them up from sleep and saying, I need your help looking at this EKG, and they're like, this is so easy for me, why do you guys need help doing this? And it's like, well, because you did 4 years of cardiology and I did like 6 weeks. But I can understand the frustration at 2 in the morning getting called like that. I think a big thing for me is the frustration with the systems. You do realize that, while I think everything's really well intentioned and we do a lot of amazing things, there are just holes in the systems, and that goes everywhere from payment systems to social care systems to even just delivering medical care and delivering health. And so it can be often very frustrating when you know this particular person needs this particular treatment and there are 50 hoops to jump through in order to get them there. Whether it's payment-based, whether it's social care-based, or any of that, can get very, very frustrating. And also say, seeing all of society, not everybody's nice. Not everybody's having a good day when they come to the emergency department, and they're very willing to let you know about it. So what I wish people would realize, I think a lot of that is actually covered in the job description, but just a few things. I think I divided it into 2 things, one from the emergency department experience and one from just medicine in general. So the ER. I think the biggest thing is sometimes people will come to the emergency department saying, I've had 8 months of these symptoms, it needs to be fixed now and today. And I think it's important to pull back and realize that when you go to the emergency department, we are trained to find emergencies and treat emergencies. Oftentimes, we don't find anything. I would say a lot of people who come in with chest pain, we're worried about. We're worried that they're having heart attacks or other things going on with the chest. A battery of tests looking for the worst possible things, and we don't find anything. And it's frustrating for both the patients and the doctors. Like, I would love to be able to tell you this is exactly what's going on, but oftentimes I can't. And I think that patients want to know, well, I'm having this pain. Why am I having the pain? And it's like, I don't know. I know you're not probably going to die from it, but I don't exactly know why you're having that pain. And that's what the emergency department is set up to do. So oftentimes people don't get a diagnosis coming out of the emergency department, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's probably a good thing. I tell people, because if we find something, it's usually pretty bad. So, disease patterns evolve as well. So we get a snapshot. It doesn't mean that 3 days from now this might not turn into something. And so, at this moment things look okay, but if you go home and continue to have this pain, if you start to spike fevers, things like that, we need to see you again because the disease may have evolved and we need to check it again. Resources are limited in an emergency department. I can understand the want to have every test done under the sun and, I gotta know what's going on. but we have to realize how many other people may need those tests. And you know, if I get an MRI of your brain, there could be a stroke patient that comes in that needs the MRI before you, and people get bounced and things like that. So there is a very limited resource. Almost everybody genuinely cares, but people have bad days. So you know, it's one of those things I wish everybody would be nice all the time, and I try to be, but sometimes it's a stressful environment, and people tend to act differently when they're stressed out. And then often, I would just say that the ERs are staffed purposely to be busy. Admin wants to save money. All the workers want as many people as possible. They come together, and then they kind of lean towards admin because they have the money. And so a lot of times the ER is just kind of understaffed for whatever volume is going on at that time. The same workup that you get in the emergency department takes 1 to 2 days as an outpatient, and we're able to do it in 3 to 4 hours. So I just try to tell people that just to put perspectives. So, you know, if you wait 3 or 4 hours for test results, it's actually pretty good because it would take 2 days otherwise. And then, as I said before, we're interrupted every 3 minutes. So if we have to run out to something else, we'll come back, we promise. And then finally, just a couple of things in medicine in general. This is my last slide. That doctors take care of individuals and society. So again, it kind of goes to that limitation of resources. You know, it'd be nice if we could order every single test for every single person, but it just, limitation of resources and what we have available in our community and what we have available within the hospital don't allow us to do that. So we have to be stewards of the resources that we have. And so it's not necessarily if I don't want to give you that test, it's would you benefit from that test, how much, and I have to decide who would benefit more too. And I think that that's something that kind of gets lost in medicine. More testing isn't always better. I'll just say that. You know, you can run I always tell people, if you run enough tests, you're going to find something that's wrong, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong clinically. It just means that now we have to do more tests to figure out if that's just okay. Antibiotics aren't always the answer. A lot of viruses don't respond to antibiotics. I'll just leave that there. And Google. They can be dangerous, be careful with them. They're decent resources, but just be careful with them, grain of salt. Big thing that I believe in is your doctor should be able to explain the decision making. I think that that's something that every patient should expect out of their physician, is that I don't understand what's going on, and really work to understand why that thought process is so we can be on the same page. Patients and healthcare providers deserve respect. I think that goes without saying, but I'll just put that out there. Truth-telling makes our jobs a lot easier. You have no idea how many immaculate conceptions I've seen in the emergency department. No way, doc, there's no way I could be pregnant, and then there's a 20-week-old baby there. Yeah, just tell the truth. And then finally, take care of yourself. Do the maintenance. I always say your body's like a car. You wouldn't let your car go without an oil change for years and years. Do the oil change, get the tires rotated, check the brake pads, you know, do that with your body, and you're going to live a long, healthy life for the most part. Okay. As I say, did I run out of time? Okay. Oh, fantastic. All right, good. I wanted to make sure I had questions to answer.
All right, so I was in an emergency room not too long ago, and it worked very smoothly. So first of all, I got on the phone and said, hey, I have these symptoms. I said, holy crap, you need to be in the emergency room. I said, okay, well, that's good news, because I was feeling quite terrible. Turned out that my intestine decided to completely close off and stop. And so you essentially, the funny thing is you think, oh, I can't eat. Well, but you can't drink much either, and you can't take any of your medications. And it's like, oh, this is going to get really bad very soon. Yes. Okay, so, and I found that essentially the emergency room did a fantastic job with the emergency thing. The things like, oh, this is very bad, let's figure out what's going on, let's try to get a treatment plan. The stuff that was a click back from that, which is, you've got to pay attention here, and you've got to pay attention over multiple shifts in multiple places with multiple people, which is, oh, this person has to get their immunosuppressant drugs into them and keep them at a certain level over time, and all of their drugs are orally administered. I've got to now find the intravenous option for that and get those programmed in along with all the other things. And that was the piece that fell apart. And, because then I sort of said, well, at least can we run a set of tests to see where I am? And some of them had zeroed out. And I said, won't kill me today, but we keep that at zero very long, and that won't be very good. Have you found, you talked about that communication between the team members piece. Are you finding that the electronics and the other things are making that work generally better? generally worse or about the same over your career arc, where you have these things that sort of have to get tended over multiple shifts with multiple people in multiple places to make it work. You know, because anytime I had one person, that was great, that worked. As soon as we went to the 5th person, we started to get a little lost in that. And the good news, all turned out perfect, and it was great. So, good experience. But the bottom line was sort of, you thinking that it's getting better or worse with all the electronic systems?
That's a good question. I would say theoretically it should get a little bit better because you have documentation.
Should.
But, and you bring up a great point, that is actually one of the highest risks in medicine is transfer of care. So whether it goes from shift to shift in the emergency department or
Emergency to hospital.
yeah, exactly, emergency to hospital, hospital to wherever, those are the biggest gaps for medical error, and it all comes down to communication, absolutely. We have a standard process that we go through, you know, it's a checklist and all of that, but there are still gaps there. And I think, you know, the biggest thing is communication, and to go back to your question about whether electronics has made it better or worse, better in the sense that the information is there, worse in the sense that people don't communicate face-to-face anymore. It's all based off of text messages and, oh, do this, do that. And yeah, people have, so when I did my first year in emergency medicine residency, we still had paper charts. And while they were horrendous to read, and a lot of times you couldn't find the information that you needed, everybody was walking around the emergency department and talking, and it was like the nurses were, hey, you got this, you got that, you got that, and it was high fives and, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that. And it was the communication was actually really good. Now, everybody sits at their own computer, and I'm getting constant messages from nurses, can patient eat? Can patient take their blood pressure at home? And it's like, I didn't know that they hadn't eaten in this long, and so then it's, yeah, so I think electronics have the potential, but they're not being used correctly and making it a little bit worse now. But we need to figure out a way to intertwine those with actual personal communication to make it better. Because you're right, that's a huge area of concern in medicine in general.
I'll give you the mic after Ellen, or Dennis will. Thank you so much, Nate. This has been really fascinating. And my question is, I know you showed ER, the pit. I've had other emergency people say that the pit is very, very realistic. And in 24 hours, they see a lot of different things. So what's the weirdest thing that you've ever had to deal with? So, you knew this was coming.
Yeah. I always try to think about this, and it's like, okay, what room am I playing to? Because I have some very interesting stories. So first of all, the pit. So I will say that the pit is one of the more realistic shows. The cases are real. The medicine is real, though it gets a little borderline there. But it's like if you took my career for the past 10 years or so and condensed it into one day. That's what the pit does. So it's not that crazy. As far as a weird story, oh my gosh. I mean, which way do you want to take it here? I would say the ones that it's always kind of what items get put where in the bag. And I'll just leave it at that. But if you can think of it, it's probably happened.
The United States spends more on healthcare, I think, than any other country in the world. And one of the things that was brought up a number of years ago is the overuse of emergency rooms for stuff that really should be dealt with through more conventional means. And part of, you mentioned the law, if somebody comes in, you have to treat them. Do you think things have improved in the last decade with modern insurance programs in terms of more effectiveness or efficiency in terms of how we provide health care and the emergency aspect of it?
I think it's probably, in terms of efficiency, has gotten worse, to be honest with you. Just there are more and more, part of the reason one of the reasons I chose to work for Kaiser was that it seemed to be a simple model. You pay up front and then whatever you need, you just get. But even Kaiser has kind of had to go back and adjust their payment systems and their billing because everything has gotten more and more expensive. And I'm sure, we all feel it in the sense that healthcare is so expensive now, and it's it's getting to a point where we're hitting that kind of asymptotic curve of people just can't afford healthcare. Even people with good, well-paying jobs, their businesses can't afford healthcare. And so at a certain point, there's a cost that just can't be, you can't go over a certain amount of cost, but all the prices are rising within healthcare. Medicine costs. I know there are some initiatives to bring down costs and do generics and things like that, but these treatment options are becoming more and more expensive. There are more and more people on dialysis that live longer on dialysis, and that costs a lot of money. Interventional things like cardiac things, valve replacements, heart transplants, things like that. They're doing some amazing things, but this all costs a lot of money. So the more and more people that become qualified for this, those prices go up. And so insurances put more and more red tape in terms of what they'll pay for and what they can't. Fortunately, I don't deal with that, but I know that people in kind of private practice and that are really struggling because of those limitations that insurance is putting on, and it's just getting more and more convoluted, I think, both from a patient standpoint and an insurance standpoint.
Okay, there are lifestyle choices that people make. Which changes in lifestyle choices would result in the biggest drop in ER entries?
Depends on the patient population. I always joke that we make a lot of our money based on young adolescent men doing silly things. But I would say, a couple of big things. If you're looking at kind of the overall population, I really think, whole food, plant-based diet, that's the way to go. That's not being vegetarian, it's just, eating more vegetables than we all eat, and really focusing on, clean eating, and then exercise. You don't have to be a marathon runner, you don't have to do any of that, just getting up and moving. Keep moving, it's the sedentary lifestyle that we're seeing where people are sitting in front of computers all day, and then they go home and sit in front of the TV, and then you sit in your car for a 2-hour commute. I've had days like that, and I have a step tracker, and it's days like that. I get 3,500 steps, 4,000 steps, and you should be getting at least 10,000 steps. Not that that's a magic number, but the idea is just keep moving, stay active, stay mentally active, stay physically active. I think that's the biggest thing. That and obviously alcohol and whatever. Alcohol, firearms, fires, cars, they don't mix very well.
Not all at once.
Yeah, we see it all at once. You'd be amazed at some of these drug screens that light up. It's pretty impressive.
To piggyback on what you asked before, how much of the public do you see using the ER in your area as their GP?
It's hard to put a percentage on that, and I would say Kaiser's a little bit skewed because everybody, well, I wouldn't say everybody, because a majority of the people that show up to Kaiser actually have insurance. But I would say even the people with Kaiser insurance, if I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say maybe 20%, 30% of the ER visits are for things that probably, just if they had any kind of contact with a primary doctor, that would be taken care of. Yeah. That's a very rough number, though.
So one last question. A lot of our people are philanthropy oriented and, put, in their wills, essentially they leave money to great organizations there. And if we were trying to hurry that process along, converting those into, not just pledges, but real money, and we're, say, the group is over 65, what kinds of things would we do to encourage people's early demise? Would it be climbing ladders? Would it be driving after dark? So kind of look at the population here. If you can give us a little bit of a recipe.
You want a recipe for disaster?
Yeah. Because you obviously see that in your job, the stuff that's like, wow, I wish I could just tell, the folks who are 70, just please stop. Because on our side, we call it program development. On your side, it's essentially
you bring up a good point. Ladders are a big one. We see that a lot around Christmas time when people are going with the Christmas lights, and then that tips off. I always think of that scene in the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation where he's up on the ladder. We see that all the time. Oh my gosh. Yeah, ladders are a big one. Driving after dark, not so much.
Being lonely?
Being lonely is a big one too. I will say, again, it goes back to the moving. I think getting out there doing this, being involved in a social club, being involved with people, being active in the community, even if it's at your gardening, working with schools and you know, whatever it is, moving around, just going for walks. We've got a wonderful place around Livermore to go for walks. I think I've actually seen Joel a couple times on walks and runs. So things like that, just enjoy it. Do all the fun things and keep moving. That's, you know, one of my favorite my favorite musician, Tom Petty, he has a line in one of his songs. It says, "I don't know, but I've been told you never slow down, you never grow old." So.
All right, well, I just want to say thank you for coming out, man. This is awesome, very entertaining. You're an awesome speaker. My question is, have you ever worked in a trauma unit?
Yeah, so I've never done my actual attending job in a trauma unit. Where I work is not officially a trauma, although we will every once in a while we'll get somebody that gets shot and they just drop them off the ER and go the other way. So that does happen from time to time, but no, my experience mostly with trauma was in Chicago. And I got to do several months at Cook County Hospital, which I think it's one of the busiest trauma centers in the entire country, to the point where they have an entire ER dedicated just to trauma, and that's 36 beds, just trauma, and there were many times where it would be completely full. Because, and I remember going to, we had to get there at like 5 a.m. for that rotation, and just listening to the news, and it would always say, you know, 4 shot, or you could tell how bad of a day it was going to be by the number of news cameras outside of the hospital. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time.
That's awesome.
One story? One quick story. So it goes back to the story. So some of you may remember this. This is back, gosh, maybe 2012 or so. It would have been 2012 because it was Obama's second term. He had just been elected his second term, and his second inauguration, he had a band play, and it was from Chicago. It was a school band of school-age kids. One of the girls that had played in that band was caught up in gunfire and was shot and killed a couple of weeks after the inauguration. And she was taken to the University of Chicago where I was at the time, and in order to try to save her, we had to cut open her chest, take her heart, and actually physically beat it like that. And so my hands were on that, doing the heart there. And then the next couple of weeks later, because it happened in Chicago, right where Obama was from, he actually invited the parents to the State of the Union address. And so that was, yeah. So anyway, that's trauma, that's a story. We'll leave it at that. Yeah.
We'll see you all next week where the district governor will be here and tell us her plan for the